is designed to gather information on the victim, to get to know every aspect of the victim's life. Operations of this type are active surveillance. Surveillance is the act of observing a target using a number of tactics such as visual, wiretapping, electronic communications, computer hacking, and installing monitoring devices in the target's home or office in order to obtain information. There are two principal types of surveillance related to VITI programs that I will discuss. Covert surveillance, which is the most typical way of gathering information, surveillance on the target in a way that does not allow the victim to know that they are being watched. The second, overt surveillance, is information gathering in a way that ensures that the target knows that they are being watched. The following steps are the steps in the remote neural monitoring process from selecting the victim to the end that likely ends in the victim's demise. From citizen to lab rat. Covert data collection. During the initial phase, the victim will have no idea that they are being watched, studied, and observed in nearly every aspect of their lives. All information from this point forward is entered into a profile protocol, which is a victim-specific collection of individual traits, habits, likes, dislikes, and so forth for each individual. Operators covertly monitor everything the victim does using a wide range of methods, through-the-wall surveillance technology, hacks, etc. Built-in software architecture allows government agents and authorized contractors to use inherent system design to gather and collect any file open on Windows devices. By creating system processes such as elevated profiles, operators own the Windows PC, able to monitor and collect any document in real time. These are internet addresses of files created on my computers, obviously accessible by these links. Windows indexing using elevated privileges can make any file disappear from the computer owner's view instantly, yet leave the file in the original folder undetectable by the victim, providing perfect deniability later if the process is discovered. They study the victim's weaknesses. The perpetrators are looking for specific weaknesses that they may be able to exploit. If there is a secret fetish, any habit, especially ones that would be viewed as controversial or embarrassing to the victim, they will find it. Is the victim predisposed to bribery or other forms of nefarious persuasion? Strengths. Is the victim a leader or a follower? Does the victim have a natural ability to influence people? How does the VITI respond to authority? It appears that strong-willed test subjects are treated to particularly harsh tactics, often ending in violent termination because presumably they are not likely to be broken easily, if ever. Likes and dislikes. Every like and dislike will be charted and entered into the victim's profile protocol, assigning a primary antagonist, the attack agent. During this phase, the PAT-C nemesis is presented. Neighbor, co-worker, ex-spouse, ex-partner, former friend, employer, or even a civilian contractor will begin to do small things that get the victim's attention in a negative way. From these actions, the victim will be able to associate this person, group, or organization with many of the issues they have faced since the problems began. They will select an attack narrative against the victim, although in the beginning there may be many as they ascertain which narrative is most effective. One or more of these false narratives will be selected for potential use to discredit the victim from a wide cross-section of society, from family to friends, colleagues, and longtime acquaintances. Each will be custom-tailored to have the maximum level of negativity to each group or individual. Infiltrate the victim's social network. By now, the victim will have acquired new friends who seem to have a lot in common with them. Some relationships may be intimate, all designed to gain the victim's trust that may later be exploited. Previously indoctrinated local perpetrators will be used to begin to spread unflattering allegations about the victim. At this point, the victims are being secretly manipulated towards actions that support the perpetrator's goals. The foundation of the operation is to use long-term planning prior to the initiation of activities against the victim. It appears that in this phase, the perpetrators decide how to move forward, up to and including just how they plan to eliminate the vitae if they become unmanageable. If the victim has a perceived weakness, operators will begin to test each weakness individually by placing the victim in situations where a carefully planned event can be staged to gauge the victim's reaction. The perfect combination seems to be something that the victim would be particularly ashamed of being associated with if discovered by friends. Many women have complained that rumors of sexual promiscuity are common. Men are accused of sexual indiscretions. If the person is heterosexual and personally finds homosexual activity unacceptable for their own lives, they may try to associate the victim with homosexual activity. Accusations or rumors of pedophilia seem to be another favorite, likely because nearly everyone would find it easy to have strong opposition to anyone who would do that to a child, and rightfully so. The wide variety of methods used to wreck the victim's reputation seem to indicate that there is a well-oiled machine in place to disparage the individual, with rumors planned inside each of the victim's social groups. The perpetrators use whatever lie they perceive as most effective at creating ill will inside the unsuspecting public, who is being deceived as well, oftentimes including the victim's own relatives. In this phase, any and every vice will be presented to the vitae in order to evaluate it for future use and perhaps entrapment as well.
The goal in this phase is to determine how their human lab rat will be used within the program. I talked about some of the tactics, but I am sure that these items are just scratching the surface here. Level 2. We are watching you. In this stage, the perpetrators introduce one or two of a range of trigger tactics to evaluate which of them is most effective. Trigger tactics are particular actions designed to grab the victim's undivided attention and are things that the victim will come to associate with actions against them. This is the conditioning phase, designed to ensure that the victim immediately associates these incidents as actions against, and that the actions are perceived in the way that they were programmed to appear to the victim. During phase 2, the victim's assigned nemesis will step up the level of aggression. The designated neighbor, co-worker, ex-spouse, ex-partner, former or even close friend will do something that the victim will find reprehensible.
Data gathered in phase 1 will aid in selecting this act. Up until this point, the vitae has become more aware of the unusual activity, but not much more. The perpetrators are now seeking a more formalized response to the vitae, a police report, restraining order, something to document a disagreement between the victim and their agent. That is the hook, the proof positive in the victim's mind that this person or group is behind these actions. Strangers may talk aloud about private matters that only the vitae should know. These words are coming from people who speak their assigned lines within earshot of the victim. This heightens the victim's concern for their privacy and increases visible signs of paranoia. Traffic incidents begin. Aggressive behavior, tailgating, and sandwiching happen at random times but often. At the same time, there are likely instances of home invasions. The invaders do not normally take anything of significant value. They may even just move some object to a different location. They systematically step up the severity of the harassment until the victim begins to become concerned for their personal safety. And during all of these intrusions, increased signs of paranoia become evident. Again, the goal is for the VITI to report one or more of these incidents, which by design will be impossible to validate. Small but noticeable computer and or phone hackings began to become obvious.
Here's my fingers on the sides, not touching anything. See, on the sides. Not touching the screen. There's nothing I'm touching on the side. Oh, look, it's typing to me. It told me earlier I had cancer, or something about cancer. It's typing right now. It did not do this when I was out of town. Thank goodness I got it recorded. It's really getting scary. Sometimes they type me messages like you have cancer. Wow. Okay, as you can see, the phone is acting on its own. I'm not doing anything.
I must point out that these signs of surveillance are conspicuous because the perps want the victim to know that they are being surveilled. As mentioned earlier, it is called overt surveillance. In my case, a screen caption program was used that caused a momentary pause in the mouse, something just subtle enough to be noticed, but covert enough to look like secret surveillance. I now understand that it was not intended to be covert at all. It was designed to get my attention and to create concern for my computer's security. The individual act of invading personal privacy, such as home intrusions and hacking personal communication devices, are acts designed to instill fear about the most basic American right. A person's home is his or her castle, secure from unreasonable search and seizure of property by the government. In this phase, operators make decisions on victim-centric harassment protocols. Victim-centric harassment protocols are the specific actions determined to be most effective at achieving the intended outcome of driving fear, stress, and anxiety in the victim's everyday life.
The tactics become a permanent record to be used in future psychological warfare operations against the VITI going forward. Once identified, those are the tactics that will be used permanently against the victim for months, years, or until the VITI life is ended. Phase 3. Sensitization. Be afraid. Be very afraid. This phase cements the targeting activity identified in the harassment protocol as most effective against the victim. These are the tactics selected from Phase 2 activity, which were considered to have the best influence on the victim's propensity to notice the activity.
Actions may include using lots of cars of the same color, all red cars or white vans, for example. Vehicles with their high beam lights on, an act called brighting, may also be used. Noise campaigns. Cars driving through the neighborhood, or neighbors honking their horns or squealing tires. There may be several people with backpacks. People wearing a particular color. People standing in a particular spot every day. Or people standing near the victim looking at nothing in stores or other places. Strangers pointing a phone in the VITI's direction for long periods, but not exactly at the victim. A helicopter may be hired to fly over the victim's home several times in one day. Police cars may be used to crowd the victim or to appear at every other corner or so in the victim's path of travel. Street theater, which are elaborate schemes acted out by multiple perps, which is designed to make the victim feel unsafe, even that their life is in danger. Games called mobbing are used, which is the act of having several perps crowd the victim as they walk down the street or as they enter a confined area, any place that will make the victim feel vulnerable. workplace mobbing. Several co-workers may be selected to constantly harass the victim in an apparent attempt to force the victim to lash out in the workplace against the assailants, who are fully protected from any form of action from the employer, who is also employed as part of the actions against the vitae. These are just a few. However, each of these actions are designed to harass the victim with a highly concentrated effort to present a single group or theme over and over again. The actions are aggressive and potentially dangerous because it is impossible to predict how a victim will react to extreme tactics used to push the victim to the outer limits of their tolerance for the perceived danger. Perpetrators will get the victim's attention. This is event association. These actions are particularly effective because they terrorize the victim while solidifying the lie in the minds of the citizen perps that the victim is suffering from mental illness, while the victim is actually responding to the psychological torture that the citizens are helping to inflict on the vitae.
In the early days, before I realized how I was being targeted, I associated some items or actions that I was programmed to recognize as potential attacks, basically because I did not understand the technology. The operators would attack me with electronic pain stimulation shortly after they would arrange for one of their perps to sit next to me with a backpack. Naturally, this person sitting near me, doing nothing in some cases, would be suspicious once I was conditioned to recognize the gang stalking. More on that in a few moments. Once I experienced a painful shock of microwave or nerve stimulation through neuropathic attack, naturally I would associate the person, and more specifically the backpack, with the attack. I surmise that these backpacks must have contained either targeting equipment or the actual portable electronic emissions device. Based on their actions or inactions, however, it was clear to me that the people who carried the backpacks did not do anything around the time of the attacks. So I also eliminated them as the actual assailants. In actuality, I later learned that I had fallen into the sick game, a trap to try to force me to act out against people who were unwitting citizens, whom were told to do things that they likely had no idea were part of a cruel psychological mind game. They were unsuccessful. I did not react to the people. I later learned that remote devices are not needed in order for the perpetrators to inflict pain. It can be done from a considerable distance away and without the assistance of any person or portable device. As in the previous two phases, the ultimate outcome during this process was to produce sufficient distress that it prompts the victim to report any of these incidents on social media, or even better, to a formal authority such as police, doctor, or mental health professional. The very real concerns about events that are 100% real incidents, when presented to someone outside the immediate eyesight of the victim, will sound like one or more potential forms of mental illness. Phase 4, the takedown. This is the act of removing the victim from normal society to isolate them into an environment designed just for them. By now, every person not directly associated with the operation against the vitae is kept at arm's length, where they cannot infer anything about the victim that was not selected for release by the perpetrators. This phase of the operation completes the totally rewritten life story of the vitae. You see, whatever contributions the vitae actually has made to their families or to society by this point do not matter. This is true in work and in our social lives as well. You see, evidence points to the fact that this operation is predicated on the premise that in society, it does not matter what you do, What matters is what people believe that you do. That fact is one of the strongest pillars of the sick and evil program.
At this point, some work episode has either caused the victim to lose their employment, or the victim fears it will happen any day. Following loss of income, the landlord or bank will likely be cruel and insensitive, deploying tactics designed to force the victim from their home, with the desired outcome of making the victim homeless, or as a minimum to make the victim nomadic or confined to a location under the perpetrator's complete control. Active schemes create a wide variety of problems designed to eliminate all income and to drain any financial reserves that the Vitae has. By now, friends treat the Vitae differently, creating an atmosphere for the victim that everyone is in on a secret that the victim does not know about or understand. Every job the Vitae applies for normally will not even earn an interview, or if the victim is hired, they are quickly fired or forced out with little or no reason. Money is fleeting fast. The Vitae has a list of people to blame, but none of it completely adds up based on what the victim understands.
No one listens or even wants to hear what the Vitae has to say at this point, because the entire social circle has been tainted by a wide range of rumors and innuendos. Previous close friends and acquaintances avoid the victim, generally using language that suggests that the problems are all in the victim's own making, or even worse, words and actions from people that the Vitae's encounter suggest that they believe that the incidents are all in the victim's mind.
There have been one or more close friends who have recently committed acts that make their continued friendship in the victim's mind impossible going forward. If the Vitae is lucky, they've discovered by this point that they are trapped in this formal covert mind control experimentation and testing program. Tragically, however, most will not understand the dangerous world of lies and deceit that has taken over their entire lives. By now, in many victims' eyes, their life may be hopeless. Phase 5. Establish control.
Phase 5 is an all-out attack. This is all-encompassing psychological warfare in its purest form. Operatives use a wide range of tactics to attack the victim, from the subtle passive-aggressive remarks to overt, in-your-face aggressive mind games, entrapments, as well as complex and highly choreographed situations designed to encapsulate every aspect of the victim's life.
I found the passive-aggressive attacks very interesting because this technique was the most difficult for me to detect and understand for a long time. Acts of passive aggression fit the program perfectly because they are difficult to detect by anyone outside the full context of the victim's personal experiences. Targeted passive aggression tactics require a thorough understanding of the types of comments that the victim would find objectionable, and the ability to skillfully mix those types of comments into the context of normal communications. Passive aggression is the mind game that provides the means to provide psychological stress to a victim in plain sight, while showing little signs of aggressive acts to the casual observer. Without background on the comments, an innocent bystander would see nothing wrong in the exchange. The goal at this point appears to be to remove the Vitae from society, to incarcerate, institutionalize, or euthanize. Passive-aggressive comments are just one small area of the mind games played by perpetrators. Let's examine a few of the most significant techniques used to terrorize Americans caught inside this hell. Gang stalking. Gang stalking, or organized gang stalking, which is a more accurate term, is one of the primary harassment tools. It means exactly what the name implies. Groups of individuals coordinated and managed to overtly follow, or stalk a victim in a way that is not easily seen by anyone other than the target. But because of the sensitization efforts in earlier phases, the victim will easily recognize these situations. Stalking, by the way, is illegal under U.S. Federal Code 2261A. I will use number 2, quote, whoever with the intent to kill, injure, harass, intimidate, or place under surveillance with the intent to kill, injure, harass, intimidate another person, B, causes, attempts to cause, or would be reasonably expected to cause emotional distress to a person. Stalking statutes are complex, but in my untrained assessment, their description of conditions fit these remote neural monitoring operations with perfection. These organized crimes are designed to inflict psychological distress on the victim in public spaces, with consequences that are impossible to predict because the victims can feel a very real and terrifying sense of immediate danger. The gang stalking technique skirts prosecution because since there are many different people used in the activity, it is difficult to prove based on current law. Yet, the psychological effects of stalking can be demoralizing and traumatizing for some, virtually impossible to ignore for many. Evidence apparent after closer study shows that stalking is also the primary weapon used to facilitate a false diagnosis of mental illness. The complicity built into these crimes is alarming as well. This is in-your-face overt control of every aspect of the victim's life. Tactics designed to give the victim the sense of hopelessness, paranoia, and despair. The citizens may have no idea that they are participating in a terror campaign against other innocent citizens because they have been lied to about the reason for what they are doing to the victim. The citizens perps may falsely believe that they are helping the government to control a criminal or a host of other potential lies about the victim, when in fact they are participating in acts designed to terrorize other citizens. National security letters and mandates for secrecy prevent the citizens from speaking out at the risk of imprisonment or worse. Their complicity makes the citizen a criminal participant for life, a fact that can easily be used to manipulate the citizen perps into further actions against the victim and others, fearing they could also be held accountable for the crimes if they do not help to eliminate the victim that now is a threat to exposing them as well. The conundrum must be an unimaginable hell.
A former CIA official who worked in the safe houses reveals that they were used not only for drug testing, but to study sexual behavior and how it could be used to manipulate people.
How do you take a woman who is willing to use her body to get money out of a guy to get him to talk about things which are much more important, like state secrets? We learned a lot about human nature in the bedroom. We started to pick up knowledge that could be used in operations.
The honeypot. Perhaps the most effective weapon against vitis is the honeypot. Honeypot is a slang term that describes an intimate relationship for hire. The partner that is paid by the perpetrators to enter into a relationship with the vitae for the sole purpose of gaining their trust so that they can betray them later. I firmly believe that every victim of this insidious program has a honeypot in their life. Close, intimate relationships build a trust and bond that cannot be otherwise achieved. This misplaced trust provides the perfect opportunity for the program's operators to use it, and the inherent vulnerability that comes from trust to entrap, trick, exploit, or even eliminate the vitae. Using a honeypot, the perpetrators have access to anything they want or need from the victim, up to and including the means to end the victim's life. Honeypots have been a mainstay as the means to track and deceive me. Since the perpetrators know everything about you, they can find just the perfect person who has the looks and can be taught to say and do the right things to ensure that the victim develops strong emotional attachments. One of the most offensive things that I've had to get over is the fact that I am 99.999% sure that I'm married a honeypot. That is an unbelievably sick and demented thing to do to anyone. Following our divorce, that woman then disappeared from all search engines. Go figure. As soon as I started to understand this program, everything that never added up about these so-called relationships with that woman added up completely. Last note, and this is to those people working as perp honeypots. They are very precise words for people who sleep with others for money. Your job is to smile, be nice, sleep with the person, get paid.